This is Ken Lipp of the News-Times. A Newport man has been sentenced to 25 years in prison for the November 2019 killing of 56-year-old fisherman Tony Larson. Stephen Joseph DeMauro, 65, was the sole witness for the defense on the last day of testimony in his trial on Tuesday. DeMauro claimed to have acted in self-defense when he shot Larson at point-blank range in the chest after he refused to leave his apartment a few blocks off Newport Bayfront the day before Thanksgiving last year, and he said he did not intend to kill him. He testified that he'd fired 2 warning shots off the deck where Larson was standing and claimed, quote, the firearm discharged, only when the victim rapidly approached him and made contact with the barrel.
My hands were down here like this with the gun. And when he was coming towards me, that's when it discharged. I wasn't even aiming. I wasn't trying to. I didn't want to hurt him.
The prosecution, led by Deputy District Attorney Lynn Howard, argued the evidence showed DeMauro had not feared Larson, but rather grown resentful over his, quote, taking advantage of the defendant and his live-in girlfriend, Darcy Patterson, who testified for the prosecution. Howard pointed to inconsistencies between DeMauro's initial statements and his testimony in court. For instance, he'd testified that he'd called 911 to, quote, get help for Tony, but then he told the 911 operator the victim was dead, as well as the fact that he'd thrown the murder weapon into brush to hide it from police. Howard also pointed to the undisputed fact that Larson had not physically or even verbally accosted DeMauro before the latter went to his bedroom to retrieve his Smith & Wesson .22 pistol, which, Howard noted, was a double-action revolver that DeMauro said was not cocked and would have thus required a quite deliberate pull of the trigger to fire.
Could you have called 911 and said, there's a person on my patio that's not leaving?
I could have, but I decided not to because...
Okay. I didn't ask you why. I just wanted to know if you could have.
The jury deliberated less than 2 hours to reach a verdict after closing arguments on Wednesday, finding DeMauro guilty of second-degree murder. Larson's brother, Ted Larson, spoke via phone during the sentencing, as did his sister, Michelle Deckert. Deckert said she'd only met her older brother for the first time a little more than 2 years ago. Their mother put him up for adoption as an infant, and he'd only recently learned that he had siblings. Deckert decried DeMauro's characterization of her brother as a mooch and said it was the defendant who she'd seen take advantage when she and her husband visited Larson and DeMauro in Newport. Sitting at the opposite end of counsel's table from DeMauro, Deckert addressed him directly, telling him he'd robbed her and her family of the chance to get to know a relative who some had only first met days before he died. She said, quote, September 1st, 2017, September 24th, 2017, November 27th, 2019, September 23rd, 2020, and a future date. On the first date, I was told I had an older sibling. On the second date, I spoke to him for the very first time. The next date, November 22nd, 2019, was when I spoke to Tony for the very last time, at 9:27 p.m. just before you killed him. September 23rd is the date the jury found you guilty and your sentence is being handed down, and when we can all start rebuilding our lives. The future date is from when we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief because you will no longer be on this earth, end quote. On the advice of his attorney, DeMauro declined to make a statement before sentencing. Before handing down that statutorily mandated sentence, Judge Bockhart said she was compelled to take a moment to acknowledge the tragic loss of life and the avoidable nature of the killing. She said DeMauro used deadly force against what amounted to, at worst, an unwanted household guest. The judge said, quote, this wasn't a burglar who came into the home at 3 o'clock in the morning. This wasn't someone who busted down the door. This wasn't somebody that wasn't invited in. And that's how you get rid of an unwanted house guest? By pointing a gun at him? I'm glad that's not our community standard. I'm glad that's the message that was sent, that this is unreasonable. That's the discussion that our nation is having right now. What's reasonable under those circumstances to shoot an unarmed man? That's what riots are happening across the nation are about. I'm glad our standard isn't different. Bockhart sentenced DeMauro to 300 months in the Oregon Department of Corrections, the mandatory minimum. Because the conviction is for a Measure 11 offense, he will not be eligible for early release. After destroying hundreds of homes in North Lincoln County, the Echo Mountain Complex fire is now fully contained. The Oregon Department of Forestry reported the 100% containment milestone Tuesday night, with the ODF's West Oregon District taking over for the incident team and patrolling fire lines. The footprint of the complex is small compared to several massive fires still burning, mostly uncontained elsewhere in the state. But the residential density in the fire zone here meant a disproportionate impact to homes. For instance, there have been 264 residences and 16 other structures destroyed by the 200,000-acre Lion's Head fire, whereas the 2,500-acre fire in Lincoln County destroyed 293 homes and damaged 22 other residential structures. The county is encouraging fire victims with destroyed or damaged property, vehicles, and businesses to complete a formal Lincoln County damage assessment available on the county website. Summer is officially over, and as if to prove the point, Mother Nature is throwing her first major rainstorm of the season at the coast this week. In a message from the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office on behalf of North Lincoln Fire and Rescue, officials warned that high winds Wednesday gusting up to 45 miles per hour and rain of 1 to 2 inches in coastal areas, up to 4 inches in the Coast Range, could particularly impact locations affected by the Echo Mountain fire. Winds could bring down already fire-damaged trees, and the heavy precipitation poses a risk of mudslides in ground newly dug up and bereft of vegetation. Barring an unforeseen rise in positive COVID-19 cases, Lincoln County will move to Phase 2 reopening on September 29th. The county was initially approved for a September 8th entrance to the stage of reopening in which bowling alleys, movie theaters, and other entertainment venues can resume operations, and some venues would have their maximum capacities increased, among other loosened restrictions. But the week prior, the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners voted to delay the move until at least September 29th, given the county's failure at the time to meet multiple public health indicators evaluated by the Oregon Health Authority. The board also wanted to see what possible effect the Labor Day holiday would have on infection rates. 2 weeks after Labor Day, state and local officials expressed confidence in the county's readiness to move into Phase 2 in 8 days. Lincoln County Public Health Director Rebecca Austin told commissioners the positivity rate was down remarkably. According to the data Austin presented during the board's meeting on Monday, the positivity rate has dropped from more than 10% to 0.6% in the latest weekly report. And last Thursday, September 17th, the health department announced that the county had met all Phase 2 health indicators for the first time. New figures to be published September 24th will be the deciding factor, and some questions remain about whether a recent decrease in overall testing or the unavoidable personal interaction during the wildfire evacuation will have an influence. But Austin said the positive outlook is reinforced by a sustained downward trend. Oregon Health Authority Director Patrick Allen participated in Monday's board meeting and agreed with Austin's appraisal. Also during the meeting, the board voted 2-1 with Commissioner Doug Hutt against, to remove the 24-hour hold required before lodging establishments in unincorporated areas can clean a room for a new guest. They also voted unanimously to extend a moratorium on new licensing for short-term rentals in unincorporated Lincoln County until December 31st. This has been Ken Lipp of the News Times. If you like this video, subscribe to the paper and follow us on social media.